everyone, and welcome to another episode of Living on Blockchain. Today, we are speaking to John. John is on the founding team of MANTRA DAO. He is absolutely great guy. He's a friend. I've worked with him on multiple product lines together. And, we had a really, really amazing conversation about how he got into the space and, what MANTRA DAO is planning to do next. They have multiple product lines and they are scaling in a tremendous way. They're really creating some good stuff for the DeFi community. They're pulling up the entire ecosystem with them. So yeah, I can't wait for you guys to hear this. In this again, in case you have any follow-up questions for John, please put them out in our comments, in our socials, or any of the other podcast platforms that this episode is being streamed on. I'd be happy to get them across to John for you. So yeah, let's deep dive right into the conversation. Hi, John. Thank you so much for taking out the time to speak to us today. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing fine, thanks. Been quite the hectic couple of months, but all good on my front. The markets have been crazy, so that's keeping us on our toes, but all good across the board.
Yeah, no, but I like what you said in the beginning, right? The market is what it is. You just have to sort of keep building.
For sure. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we've been in the game for quite some time now, so we're not new to this type of tumultuous market and volatility.
Yeah, you get used to it after being there in the world, right? Like, the people who just get in, they're obviously very appalled by the kind of fluctuations. Once you've seen like one or two cycles, then this is just a part and parcel of being in the sector.
100%. I mean, it's you got to be able to stomach all the lows to, be able to kind of enjoy the highs as well.
Absolutely. Okay, so for our, listeners, I would love for you to give us a little background about how you got into the blockchain and crypto space.
Sure. Yeah, so I'll take a little bit of a step back. Basically, when I was graduating from university, I was going to school in Spain, and I was a fairly early adopter of Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. I bought my first Bitcoin back in 2013, but at that point, I was a poor college student, so it was basically a trade-off between drinking beer that weekend or buying Bitcoin. So, not every weekend was buying Bitcoin. I'll just say that.
Of course.
And then when I graduated, it was the kind of the peak of the European financial crisis, and I was looking for jobs. I was going to school in Europe at the time. I'm from the US originally, and there was pretty much nothing. So I ended up going to B school, and then B school, I really started getting into the general topic of fintech. So I was always interested in tech, always interested in finance. And up to that point, I'd been looking at a more traditional path, which I continued to progress on down the line. But long story short, I was, interested in looking at this for quite some time. I ended up doing a master's degree in both Germany in management and then in China in economics. Wow. So once I was over in China, part of this kind of double degree, we continued to look at fintech, and I became a little bit more kind of engrossed with it, particularly as, right around that time was when international people and foreigners were able to actually participate in WeChat or Alipay. Before that, it was really, really hard to actually even participate in those things. Actually, I think it was illegal. So, it really kind of struck me about how this type of technology can really kind of like change the human experience with how you interact with your finances and, commerce and all these types of different things. So I saw that and it kind of like struck a chord in my head, thinking about how different types of technologies can really impact the commercial use and the kind of the end user. So at that point, I was lucky enough that I was able to get a job at a bank in Shanghai called Guotai Junan Securities. So I was, continuing down the traditional path a little bit. I was actually one of the first foreigners to ever work for this bank. And it was quite the experience. But then I ended up actually becoming part of this emerging technology research team that was focused on looking at all different types of emerging technologies. And, that was really where the kind of the conflux of everything that I just spoke about kind of came to fruition. And I was able to kind of position myself to be the kind of the research lead for crypto and blockchain within this little small emerging tech team that was meant to have a global focus. So I, really started just deep diving into all things crypto and blockchain. This is around 2015, 2016. And it was a, kind of a right place, right time kind of thing to a degree. But it, after that, I started basically writing a lot about different fintech and crypto opportunities that I was seeing, participated in. Was very early in things like Neo, and which was previously called Ant Shares, some of these different things. So that was kind of like my first foray into it, back then. And then since then, I've been involved in any number of different things, from crypto exchange business to, more traditional side with a US broker dealer that has a license for digital securities. Now MANTRA DAO, which is obviously DeFi focused, and a couple different other things. So I've gotten my hands into a lot of different stuff over the years.
Right. Okay. This is very interesting. So, initially you were saying that, you were working with a bank, right? And they were already looking at these emerging technologies, like they were looking at blockchain and Bitcoin, etc. then, or was this a tech team that was focused on some other technologies like AI, ML, etc.?
They looked at everything. So the way China works, or tends to work, is that through the central government they have these kind of 5-year plan milestones or kind of high level topics that the government kind of sets out as like, this is what we're looking at, and obviously the market takes that as a signal like, oh, we should look at this too. So because that's obviously how you're able to kind of assess your strategy based off the policy that you will imagine is going to come to the market in the future, or at least during the next 5 years. So they had things like machine learning and AI, and blockchain was one of them, and I think smart city was one, and automation, and all these types of things that were topics that are over the broader idea of kind of emerging technology within the Chinese scope. So I was positioned as one of the individuals who was actually looking at that team, or within that team, and I just kind of focused myself on something that I was the most interested in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. But it's interesting that the way, that is the kind of work culture that they embody, that there are these milestones that are being set, and the government itself is kind of encouraging, entities to sort of look at these technologies, because that the same thing cannot be perhaps said for other governments as well. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's interesting because, the bank that I was working for is a state-owned bank. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, it wasn't like JP Morgan or something like that, which, has even had its own, kind of ups and downs with Bitcoin and crypto.
Right. Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to see, how some of these, kind of like very kind of traditional conservative institutions were looking at these type of things. I'll give a lot of credit to the leaders of the company at that time for looking at this stuff. I will say that unfortunately, in the end, it actually never ended up amounting to anything, at least while I was at the bank. So I left kind of before, anything really emerged in respect to like actually being able to act on this information. So yeah, I mean, that was the main issue, taking it. And I think there was a lot of kind of learning and educational experiences that happened from it. But, being able to
execute that might there might be a lag here.
That was the trick. Yeah,
execution is always key. So, but it's interesting that that is the way they kind of undertake and approach innovation. So that's interesting. So, moving on to other things, tell me a little about what you guys are doing at MANTRA DAO and how you got started. And let's start with that, and then I'll ask you about your next big milestone.
Sure. Yeah. So, MANTRA, we launched almost exactly a year ago. So, I think about 10 months. On August 18th is when we officially launched the token. So we were relatively early to the DeFi game, I would say. We launched in a nice time within kind of the middle of DeFi summer last year. And essentially, what kind of led up to MANTRA, and it's actually kind of an interesting thing, is a series of failures and very, very near misses. Obviously, a lot of this was perpetuated by COVID and just kind of unforeseen circumstances. But it is interesting, and I'm actually very kind of blessed and happy that it happened this way, because I love the project that I'm working on, and the outcome that we've achieved so far. But essentially, what happened was I was working with that broker dealer company, Tritorian Capital, which was doing kind of regulated STOs and various offerings, and actually we were working on a very kind of high profile deal in the US called, which was the contract tokenization for Spencer Dinwiddie, who was an NBA player for the Brooklyn Nets at the time. And I mean, basically this launched like right before the peak of COVID. So everything was going quite well. And, we finally had this big on our table and on our desk that we were kind of going to use as the champion deal for all of these future things to come. Obviously COVID happened, and, the world changed. So that, long story short, fell apart. And, then we needed to find something else to do. So I actually got asked to join, or actually I was talking to one of our investor friends, and he asked me just help them start this new kind of like security tokenization platform and ecosystem. And I was going to do this together with Will, who's, obviously another one of the MANTRA co-founders. And basically we got to like literally right around the point where we're about to get a seed round check signed for $3 million, term sheet signed. And the LP, or would have been signing off on it, the night before we're supposed to meet him, he also got COVID.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So that fell apart.
Right.
And then we got asked to run an exchange, and again, kind of like right on the stroke of twilight, The funding behind that pulled out. So it's like, within 3 or 4 months, there's like these 3 opportunities that presented themselves that ended up falling apart. And then, we kind of were like forced to figure something out. And lo and behold, we were working together with some of the people from Rio DeFi, and someone had the idea to do MakerDAO on Polkadot, which it's a fairly high level idea. And we basically took that like very high level concept, and everyone's like, okay, you should do an ICO. And we're like, do ICOs even work anymore? Because this was before there was anyone doing ICOs again. This was back in like, April, May of last year. So people, it wasn't hot again. There wasn't launch pads, there wasn't any of this stuff. And we went for it, and we kind of developed this whole ecosystem focusing on staking, lending, a validator business, and an emphasis on community governance and community participation within this kind of consumer-facing financial product-based platform. And that's kind of MANTRA DAO. I mean, we basically launched it back in August. Like I said, it was really originally focused primarily on the Polkadot ecosystem. We still are actively building on Substrate, and within that ecosystem, we are running nodes for both Polkadot and Kusama. But it's just taken a little bit longer than what we expected. So we had to kind of build out our platform and our products on Ethereum in the short term. So we've launched a multi-asset staking platform. We have a lending money market. We have a kind of a lottery style product called the Mantra Pool, which takes rewards from our validator business, or assets from our validator business, and basically raffles them to 5 winners on a weekly basis. And those winners, in order to enter the raffle, have to pay or spend their own tokens to access it. We launched that. What else have we launched? We have a launch pad, which you guys participated in, and we're also launching a regulated DEX. Actually, kind of everything gone full circle. We're working with the broker dealer Tritorian through a joint venture in the US to launch a regulated DEX product, which I think the timing right now for that is just absolutely perfect. We're building and launching on a bunch of different chains, and we're currently live on Ethereum, BSC. We'll be launching multiple products on Polygon, Echo, Solana, and of course, Polkadot and Kusama through a various parachain down the line, whenever that gets worked out. So we believe in this kind of the multi-chain, blockchain agnostic approach. We've always said it from the beginning, we're not maximalist in any sense. We support the Ethereum ecosystem, we support the Cosmos ecosystem, Polkadot ecosystem, Solana. We're not firmly in any one camp. So that's
the only way to grow, right? Like the ecosystem is not going to grow if you're just going to be if you're going to be like a Bitcoin maximalist. That's not going to happen. There are so many chains, there are so many people that are building on other chains, and they are doing some wonderful work there. You guys are creating like a huge ecosystem from what I can hear and what I've seen already. I would like some, tips perhaps later on how I can manage product.
Of course.
But yeah,
of course, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm going to be sort of buzzing you regarding this, but this is like, as I said, you start off with the envision of this entire ecosystem. Like, did you have this in mind when you had started MANTRA DAO?
So we did have a pretty big vision, I would say, when it first started. I will admit, we have changed significantly with respect to kind of how things have actually developed. I mean, that's just a part of the process of, trying things out, iterating, finding what works, and then just opportunities kind of presenting themselves. So, we did have a vision, but, and actually I would say that we laid out a roadmap when we launched our token last year, which was basically 3 quarters. So we had, Q3, Q4, and Q1 of last year that had, various things that we needed to accomplish within a set amount of time. And we accomplished basically everything, within that roadmap. The broader, larger vision is still, more encompassing than that. And there's still a lot that we are working on. I mean, we're far from where we want to be, not only with the existing products, but with new ones. And we're always constantly trying to take community feedback, improve it, see what the market is actually valuing, adding additional features and things, and, trying things out all the time, adding new chains, new networks, new ecosystems, this type of stuff. And constantly, again, having our own kind of reflections on what works, what we need to improve on, various products where they need to get better at, how we can have better value capture for the token. The token part is really, really important. It's an interesting conundrum because, the company itself, we make a lot of money. We have multiple revenue streams that, even in bear markets, still make a decent amount of money, particularly the validator business, I would say. And, because of that, and also just because of the fact that we raised offering back in, mid 2020, everything is significantly appreciated since then in terms of price. So a lot of the assets that we either received as part of our token offering and or we invested in back then have gone up significantly. So we're sitting on a fairly sizable treasury. So we're in a good position for a bear market, I will say, especially compared to, some of the, projects that, raised when ETH was at 4,000, for example.
Right.
So that definitely gives us a leg up, I would say. But, again, we're far from where we're going to be, and we still have a lot of building to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you said about, sitting on a good treasury, so that is very important. Like if you're going to be building and scaling a project, right, that, you should have that peace of mind that, your runway is going to sustain you, your company treasury will sustain your innovation. So that is very important, and more power to you guys for being able to sustain it and create these multiple revenue channels, which is where a lot of projects kind of, I believe, fail, right? That they're not able to sort of monetize on a lot of multi-channels, or perhaps scale the project in a manner that they can take all the multiple product lines that they've created and scale. So yeah, so that is all very commendable. Now that you mentioned in the beginning how COVID had a certain impact with the way you kind of launched the product. So now, what would you say has been the impact of COVID now, like especially on your team? Like, is it a remote first team? How are you guys managing that?
Yeah, good question. So we have a fairly sizable team. The vast majority of it's been remote, actually. So I'm based in Hong Kong. The management team is in Hong Kong, and we tend to focus operations here in Hong Kong. But finding good dev resources in Hong Kong is challenging, I will say. So, we've actually built out a fairly sizable tech team all over the place. But the core, I think, would be in Australia, actually. Then we have a couple teams across Eastern Europe. We have, a couple of advisors that help out and support, locally and also in the United States. So it is kind of all over the place. COVID has obviously made it so that, we've a lot of the people that we work with, I've never met before.
Yeah.
At least in person. So I'm looking forward for that to change. Obviously looking forward to meet all of our team coming months, year or plus. So, definitely looking forward to that. But, I've always worked on projects that have been like for my entire crypto experience that have been kind of global in nature. And there's been people all over the place, so pretty used to late night calls and early morning calls. And, definitely was very familiar with Zoom well before well before COVID happened.
So. Right, yeah, likewise. So I believe that, with the COVID hitting us, the one silver lining is that, you hire and pick from, because remote first has become like a norm, right? So you can actually hire wherever good talent beckons. And that, I believe, is like a big advantage now. Because you're kind of, if you're catering to a global audience, it's good to have like a global team as well. The diverse nature of your team can actually help the product in many ways.
For sure, I agree. And then, I mean, to be honest, like we have products that somewhat require, in my opinion, 24/7 vigilance,
right?
To a degree. So
yeah.
It helps me sleep a little bit at night knowing that there's always some eyes on it. That doesn't mean that it's not, that you're not worried that something's going to get hacked or exploited or something like that. That's always a worry, but it's not as bad as it could be when you have trusted people that are 24/7 awake.
Yeah. Somebody or the other is always like looking. So that's like a good advantage to have. So what is like the next big milestone for you guys in terms of, the multiple product offerings that you have? What would be like one big milestone that you want to achieve?
Good question. The next thing that we're going to be launching will be focused on the swaps that we're launching. So one is a crypto focused, a crypto only swap. I don't have a name for that just yet. We're thinking either like Mantra Swap or Sherpa Swap. That'll be on the Mantra DAO app. And then the other product that's a big one is Soma Finance DEX, which is the US regulated DEX for crypto assets, tokenized equities, ETFs, STOs, you name it. That's being built and it's actually in the middle of its fundraise, or at least the seed round right now. Although that's looking like it's going to be well oversubscribed. So yeah, I mean, that's those are probably the two ones that I think will be the most seen. We've undergone, a lot of like kind of back-end improvements on stuff, so we're launching a bunch of new APIs for all of our product just to kind of help with the connectivity and kind of the, I guess, ability to build and, connect back and front end within our own platform, just making it easier and it's more streamlined and faster and just a bit more quality. That doesn't obviously show as much to the end user, but it does make the experience better. So that's one thing. What else are we doing? I mean, we're launching a bunch of different chains on a bunch of different chains. So, we'll continue to have, I think we'll be on across all of our products on, 4 to 5 different chains within the next, month to 2 months max. That
That's
includes,
very
as I mentioned,
exciting.
Polygon, Hecko, and Solana. And then, we're building some pretty cool stuff on Substrate natively. Actually, after this call, I got to go to our Parity Builders program call with the Parity team. And that one it should be interesting because, with some of the like more comprehensive financial products are being built natively in Ink on Substrate. So that's also a pretty cool thing that's gonna
Exciting.
come in, and hopefully not too distant future.
Yeah, no, this is all very exciting. What you're saying that like having your product lines and on multiple chains, I believe like so much work goes into all this. Like I understand
Mm,
that, and you're saying this with completely effortlessly. So that kind of confidence I'm really liking, and the fact that you guys have such big milestones in terms of launching the swaps, etc. They're going to be a hit. Like you already know it because this is something I believe that the market already kind of there's a niche there, and people want this. So whatever you said in terms of your milestones, it's all sounding, fabulous. I'm already like very convinced that, you guys are you're creating some wonderful products. And as I said, it's an ecosystem in itself. So yeah, like more power and kudos to you. Now, kind of moving on from your work and getting some of your personal opinion perhaps into the
mm,
conversation. This is like a question that I've been asking almost everybody who's been coming on the show recently and off late. Like, what is their opinion about NFTs? Because there is so much noise. Now there has been like it's kind of plateaued, but there was like a boom in NFTs, right? So recently.
mm.
So I would love to know what you think about NFTs personally.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, not that again, I've seen the crypto bubbles multiple times in my
Yeah.
experience. So, seeing how ridiculous that went,
Yeah.
was, I could see that was coming. I don't want to say a mile away, but, well before it happened,
Right.
meaning the burst of the bubble. I do think that NFTs are still really cool
Hmm.
products. I think there's a lot of use for them to be implemented into financial products, actually. So there's a lot of different things outside of just, crypto punks or, BitClout,
Right.
tokens and whatnot. There's just a lot of improvements that I think will come. And, sometimes you got to have the crap get washed away in order to actually, get some of the great stuff.
Yeah.
So I still think that there's a future for NFTs. I don't think they're going anywhere. But,
Hmm.
the random, be frank, not really well done piece of art that sells for,
Yeah.
$100,000
Yeah.
plus, I'm glad that that's, not
That's
the
over.
norm
Yeah.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm also glad. I think that that it was kind of giving the space a bit of bad name, so to say, right? Already people
Mm,
think that crypto is too speculative in nature, and then you have this piece of artwork. I understand that beauty is in the kind of the eye of the beholder, and people who are buying it obviously are seeing something that perhaps I'm too ignorant to understand. But even I did not feel very positively about this entire the boom that there's like $69 million artwork by people, etc. I was not able to wrap my head around it. As you said, that it's a very, very interesting space. It has a lot of potential, but right now, I believe that potential is yet to be discovered. Like for day-to-day
mm,
use, like what is that problem that that is being solved perhaps here? That is kind of being overshadowed by all this glitz and glamour of all the money that is being thrown away on these art pieces, which again, like everybody can have their opinion, but I also thought that it's just a bubble ready to kind of waiting to be burst sometime soon, which it did. Now
for
it's
sure.
kind of yeah. So I'm just hoping that a real use case. Where would this train sort of end up? I believe that it's like a fast-paced going phase train, but where is it going to end up? I don't know. I do hope that it ends up somewhere good, and I believe that there is immense potential here.
I agree completely. I mean, I think there's still a lot of cool stuff that's happening
Right. Yeah.
in the NFT space. You're definitely getting a lot of eyes on it too,
Hmm.
from, big galleries and from, big institutional players and whatnot. So I don't,
Absolutely.
again, I think that there's still a lot of room to go, but, some of the more mediocre stuff needed to get washed out.
Yeah, no, as you said, that at times you need the crap to sort of wash away for you to actually get to the good stuff. So that's like a good analogy in my opinion as well. I believe that there is a lot of potential, but then that entire this bubble that we kind of went through that could have been avoided. It would have been
Mm,
better had it been avoided, but then it's fine. I believe it's a trajectory. So we went through that part as well. So now on to like my next question. There are so many people in this space, and if a newbie is sort of starting out and trying to get into the crypto space, which thought leaders or influencers would you recommend to these guys to start like tuning into to get the right information? Because at this moment, it's very important that people get the right information as well, right?
no, completely agree. I mean, there's a lot of BS influencers out there too.
Yeah, exactly.
um, who just shill whatever and, don't disclose anything in terms of what they're getting paid to do so, and all kinds of kind of shady stuff. One particular one that I definitely support would be Blockchain Brad.
Okay.
I think Blockchain Brad is great, unbiased. Well, not completely unbiased, but he is complete, class act. He will always disclose if he's ever invested anything. He's an educator at heart, so these types of traits are something that I admire. I think that the Three Arrows guys, Kyle and Ju, they have some really cool stuff and interesting stuff. I like Hasu, I think he's a researcher at Paradigm. He has some really interesting stuff on DeFi. Who else? I'm actually just looking at my Twitter line to see who I'd like to follow. Yeah, those are some of the good ones.
Yeah, these are some like interesting names actually. That you've actually pulled out some good influencer names as well, because usually people take a lot of names of founders. And now that we have some good influencers here as well. And these are good people to look at because, as you said, they are more forthright about what they are doing. And I believe something that has been missing of late in the conversations that people have in the blockchain space, because a lot of people are kind of, vote as a sales rep, or they're getting some advantage by putting out that information. And some obviously people who have just come in, they can get burnt as well. So it's always good to have like a good balance of operators and influencers and the kind of information that you're assimilating. Obviously, do your own research. Good names that you've put out as well. So coming to my last question, John, this is something that I ask everybody that kind of comes on the show. If somebody is viewing in from the outside, so to say, what would be your 2 cents to this particular person who's intrigued by the blockchain and crypto space but still hasn't really stepped in? What would be your 2 cents to them to start living on blockchain?
Good question. Obviously do your own research. I think that, you got to start to learn the fundamentals, and, it does come down to kind of, having a passion for it and finding your passion for it. So, read as much as you can, follow people on Twitter who seem like they are key personalities, watch YouTube videos, go to meetups if you can in your country, if it's actually allowed. And reach out to people who are actively participating in the space, see if they can help, give context, give feedback, and share some of their stories. So that's one that key thing. And then I think more importantly than anything, just get active, get your hands into it, play around, maybe start with Bitcoin and Ethereum, but get a wallet and put a little bit of money in there, and test out these various protocols that you find interesting. Because I think really, without getting your hands dirty, you'll never be able to kind of it's not never, but it's just harder to catch up because this industry moves so fast. So if you want to learn to figure out what's going on in DeFi, you got to participate in DeFi, right? So get a MetaMask, get a ledger so you can protect yourself, and go play a little bit. Maybe you will lose some money, so don't put anything life changing in there at first. But I think it really does come down to trying to participate and just figuring out what it's all about. And you're going to make mistakes, and maybe you're going to buy some shit coin that doesn't ever do anything, but that's all part of the experience, right? I think even the best of the business have had tokens that never performed, or rug pull or anything like that. So actively participating both on your own, just actually trying, but also just reading and reaching out and just taking an active approach, I think is the best way to get involved.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this is very good advice. There's also like a misconception that people have that this space is too tech heavy and it's only for developers. So this is something that I try to dispel, and every time I sort of go out and talk that, we have opportunities for people from all profiles and backgrounds. The only thing they have to sort of do is be open to learning, right? Because there will be a hyper growth and learning phase when you enter this space, just because it's so dynamic and it's so new. But it's totally worth it. And you don't really have to be completely, a techie to actually get into the space.
100%. I think that should never be something that, scares you too much from joining base. You can come from any number of different backgrounds, and I think you can still be an active, solid participant within the ecosystem. So 100% think that that's extremely important to just, continue to get out there and give it a shot.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so this has been a really fun conversation, John. Any kind of last thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, really appreciate, having me on here. Always happy to be a partner to you and Mohit. And, we're glad that, we're able to work together on so many different things.
Absolutely. I look forward to working together on bigger things as well in the future. And I'm really grateful that you could take out the time. Thank you so much.
Of course, my pleasure. Thanks again for having me.